guys for allowing us the space to come talk about this stuff. This book is about sort of the build-up to the riots and the pandemic in Minneapolis. It's sort of more of a human story about the people that were living in Minneapolis at the time, and sort of how everything played out. And I was volunteering with Floyd at the Salvation Army every weekend during this book, when this book took place. So basically, I was a caregiver for a aquatic district in downtown Minneapolis, and we had moved there in, I think, 2017. The whole sort of trajectory of the book has been sort of truncated into like maybe a year or two. So the time frame is a little messed up, but it's very much based on actual events. This is sort of the second book in a series. My first book, Corners Untouched by Madness, kind of touches on some Latino issues. This book is more about African American issues. My new book, which I haven't announced the title yet, but this is the first announcement of the new title, is called The Warmth of Ashes. And it's about sort of the aftermath of the riots and pandemic in Minneapolis. And that book is going to be more about like the Asian American community in Minneapolis and sort of the problems there. So this is all sort of like, a white guy going into these communities and sort of trying to not necessarily being very welcomed, but just experiencing sort of what's going on and writing about it. So that's sort of what this whole memoir project has become. And so I'm gonna have a Q&A period after the reading, and then so in this chapter, this is chapter 12. This is about halfway through the book, and it's a chapter about my character Daniel taking care of Sam, who's the quadriplegic. And in the chapter, I'm taking Sam to the dispensary to get legal marijuana, and sort of it's sort of the first appearance of George Floyd in the book as sort of like this. He's a very, very minor, subtle character, but the book is mostly about like sort of my life with my client, and then how it's running kind of parallel to what's going on in Minneapolis. And then the last chapter in the book is sort of like the beginning of the riots. So that's sort of how this is all framed. Is that the riot, the book is called Burn the City to the Ground, but it's not a story about what happened. It's a story about the build up to what happened. So this is chapter 12. And the setting is downtown Minneapolis, and I'll just go from there. I shoved open the heavy metal door located in the back alley behind the apartment building. Sam was just exiting the freight elevator, and I waited patiently for her to roll through before allowing it to close. She went on ahead through the alley and out onto a sidewalk adjacent to Hennepin Avenue, one of the busiest streets in downtown Minneapolis. Her wheelchair shook around as it glided over gaps in a surprisingly uneven pavement. I walked at a brisk pace in an attempt to keep up, and I was in luck because the light at the corner had turned red and Sam would have to wait. I stopped at her side, my hands clutching the backpack straps wrapped tightly around my shoulders. How far is this place again? Sam looked down the street as though she could see where we were headed. It says on my phone that the dispensary is about a mile from here. Just walk down Hennepin and take a left on 9th Street. Got it, I replied. Putting in one of the earbuds that were connected to my cell phone, I turned the music up a little as the light turned green. Sam sped on ahead. She yelled back at me, Dan, I'm just going to go into the bike lane. I quickly pulled the single headphone out and trotted after her. Are you sure that is safe? I mean, is it legal? I caught up and jogged alongside her on the sidewalk. Come on, I beckoned. Get out of the street, Sam. This is downtown Minneapolis. Sam looked determined as she sped on ahead. We stopped at another stoplight and Sam pulled her chair back onto the corner. If bikes can do it, so can I, she replied. Try bumping all around up and down on the sidewalk and tell me the blacktop isn't better. I sighed. Yeah, I imagine it might be. Just stay close, okay? It might be better to have a second set of eyes. Okay, Dad. The light turned green and Sam sped forward. I tried to keep up. No need to follow so closely. I'm a big girl and can take care of myself. Just take a left on 9th Street and look for me. She pointed to a Grace in my building she was scooting by and called out to me. Hey, look, it's the gay 90s. It's like your home. Why don't you just stop here and pretend we were never living together? She cackled as she sped away. I had heard of the club. It was a famous gay bar in the Twin Cities and it was known for its wild parties. I let the comment roll off my back and continued on. She was going faster. Sam sped through another green light, and just as she made it through, it turned a cautious shade of amber. By the time she was at the opposite corner, it had turned red. Damn it, I lamented. I waded out into the street a little as a car came speeding around the corner, nearly hitting me. I jumped backwards. Taking a few steps forward again, it seemed as though the coast was clear. I ran through the red light, reaching the other side of the street. Sam was halfway down the block. We were entering the theater district, and large marquees peppered the street corners. Les Miserables was in town and at the Orpheum Theater, and Neil Young was playing a sold-out show at the Stadium. If only I had the time or money to see my favorite music. Maybe next time, I thought to myself. She crossed the next street and took a left down the bike lane on the opposite side. I attempted to run after her, but was stopped again by a red light. When I finally caught up to Sam about 10 minutes later, she was waiting for me on a handicap ramp in front of a thick plexiglass door. Ring the buzzer, she commanded. Yes, miss. I noticed there was a small video camera above the belt. I pressed it, and several moments later, a voice rang out through the intercom. Are you a registered patient? The metallic speech seemed garbled and distant. Yes, I mean, not me. This gal I'm here with. I stepped aside so that the camera would be pointed at Sam. She raised her limp left hand and began beating it against her chest. Ugh! Came sputtering out of her throat. She was suggesting she had a mental impairment. My face was scarlet. Come in, the voice echoed robotically. There was a soft click and a green light shone on the door. We entered a small room the size of a hall closet with another heavy glass door on the opposite side. Sam rolled in and waited behind me as I peered through the window pane. There was a desk, surrounded by a bulletproof glass about 6 meters away. I waved at the woman behind the desk and immediately heard another distant click as the door was unlocked. I rubbed my neck and winced, using my other hand to open the door. After you, ma'am, I bowed. Don't be a dumbass, she chuckled. Beauty before inexperience. We stopped in front of the desk and I produced Sam's ID card. Her face looked somber, so much less animated than the actual Sam. You would think it was a mugshot. Thank you. You can go on into the waiting room, you guys. I heard a third door unlock and we entered a brightly lit room with hardwood floors and ample seating. This is just sort of an assessment, right? Yeah, frat boy. Just meeting the pharmacist. No drugs yet. Why, do you want some? One of the receptionists glanced over in our direction. What? No. I don't want some. I strained, pulling my head down over my eyes a little. Okay, Dad, just checking. If you have some place to be, I'm good here. I know the way back. The receptionist looked back at her computer screen and began typing. Do you really think it's a good idea for you to be alone on the city streets in your condition? My condition? Sam repeated. You mean suicidal? I want to die, yeah, but I'm too chicken shit to drive out in front of a bus or something. What happens if I live but get brain damage? You still have to keep me alive. All I will say is Hail Satan over and over again. Maybe you can bring me to church with you. Do you honestly want that? I don't. But I trailed off. Really, Dan, I insist. Get out of here. Go buy me some peanut butter cups or something. Well, since we are in this area, I might go check out the homeless shelter. Why the hell would you go out there? Do you want to get robbed? She challenged. I want to volunteer. Huh. Welcome to this week's installment of Daniel Saves the World. Yeah, I blushed. Something like that. Someone called Sam's name from the other side of the room. Just meet me at the apartment. I'll be fine. Suit yourself. I turned and walked out the security doors back onto the street. I paced back the way we had come on 9th Street, but instead of turning on Hennepin, I continued walking until I got to the Greyhound bus station. I looked down at the map on my phone. Someone walked by and our shoulders connected, nearly knocking me over. I turned around to see a tall, thin African man in filthy clothes with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. When he realized he had my attention, he spoke up. "Hello, sir. Could you spare $1? I just need bus fare to get back home, please." Sorry, I replied awkwardly. "I don't normally carry cash on me." "Well," he continued, "that phone and backpack sure would help me out a lot." "Sorry again, not for sale." I quickly began walking around the corner of the station. "Who said anything about buying them? Hey, don't walk away from me." I hurried around the corner. I could see the steeple of the church about a block and a half away. Several bedraggled loiterers were standing on the sidewalk, leaning against the building. I tried not to make eye contact and continued on. At the corner, I crossed the street as a mess of pigeons crowded the crosswalk. Some flew away as others simply ignored me and continued searching the asphalt for traces of food. Now the displays peppered the sidewalk in front of the sturdy brick building. The sign on the front read Salvation Army, Harbor Lights Center, Minneapolis. I squeezed past several more homeless people on my way through the door. A security guard stopped me when I got to the front desk. "Who are you?" He held out his arm. He looked like John Henry, the steel-driving man, stoic, solid, a formidable opponent to anyone who entered the shelter. I stopped before reaching his outstretched hand. "I want to volunteer," I informed him. "You need to fill out paperwork. You need to talk to our coordinator." "Can I just do that later? I want to see Janet," I appealed. "Why didn't you say so? She is the cook back in the kitchen. Lunch is being served now. She might be a little busy. Let me check with her and see if you can come back." He disappeared between two stout-looking wooden doors. I scanned the entryway. It looked about as decent as you would imagine a shelter could look. The tube lighting illuminated the place in a way that I couldn't be sure whether the walls were bright white or some shade of blue or green pastel. The floor looked scuffed. The shine had worn down in several places. Pieces of trim were coming unglued in a few corners. The place reminded me of my old elementary school, which had been built in the 1920s or 1930s. I nodded towards a drifter on the opposite wall. He ignored me and turned the other way as the security guard emerged from the cafeteria. "She's just getting done," he urged me to follow him. Janet was a motherly-looking black woman with extremely short curly hair, wire-fitting glasses with rectangular lenses, and a small gap between her two front teeth. She looked to be around my mother's age, give or take about 10 years. She stood behind a warming table like those you would see at a buffet, scooping out food onto plastic lunch trays. "Who is this, Floyd? Your friend?" she asked. Floyd looked at me. "This man here wants to do some volunteering. Can you show him around?" He asked for me. "For me? I can. Put on an apron, honey, and get over here." Okay, I replied nervously. I thought this was just the meet and greet. "Don't be silly. We need to know if you're willing to get your hands dirty." I rounded the stainless steel counters and Janet handed me a sheet of plastic that I unfolded into a disposable apron. Just then, panicked shouts violently fractured any feelings of security I may have built up. The double wooden doors burst open and two men came tumbling through, one landing on top of the other. "Motherfucker!" one called out, violently shaking the other by his shirt collar. Floyd ran across the room and jumped into the fray, using his massive reach to pull them off of each other and hold them apart. A second security guard entered the cafeteria moments later and escorted the two men out into the entry. "It's not usually like this," Janet reassured me. "Don't be scared at all. These people just need help. We all need help sometimes." Right. I still felt a little uneasy. My legs were like jello. "Lunch is done. Come over here and help me clean out this cauldron." She handed me a large brush on a stick and a piece of steel wool. We walked to the back of the kitchen where a giant pot was sitting, encrusted with some kind of chili or possibly marinara sauce. "Okay, get to it," she instructed. Well, aren't you going to help me? You clean, I watch, I ask the questions. She smiled. What brings you down here? Community service? Well, if you must know, I began scrubbing. I was recently diagnosed with cancer. I guess it just made me realize I wanted to do something more meaningful with my life. Oh, honey, I'm sorry. It's not serious, is it? She looked at me with compassionate eyes. I'll be fine. What were you doing with your life before that was so meaningless? Ha! I half-heartedly chortled. I take care of disabled people. I know that is something, but I'm always pushing myself to do more, you know? Yeah, I know what you mean. We get a lot of church folk in here acting like you. You go to church? You go to church? I don't. I'm Buddhist. Janet grabbed a water hose off the wall and sprayed a little into the pot. I reached for the steel wool and continued scrubbing. Interesting. They don't believe in God, though, right? Hard to say, I replied. Actually, a Buddhist guy named John told me about you. How do you know him? I asked. Well, I don't really. He came here to give a talk about spirituality once. I met with him when he came, but it is rare we get someone like that in here. This is an evangelical organization after all. Why is it hard to say if you believe in God? Well, it's not that I don't. I just don't know if that's what I believe anymore. Not on a literal basis anyway. So you believe in God. That helps her out here. Janet adjusted her glasses and then rolled her plaid shirt up to her elbows. She seemed happy with her assumption. Let me get in there. She grabbed the wool out of my hands and vigorously began scrubbing the pot. Like this, man, like this. I took a step back, suddenly feeling intimidated. Does this mean I didn't pass the test? I asked. Oh no, you passed. We accept cute little white boys here. Always willing to take them, Janet snickered. Ah, winning criteria. That's it for my personal interview. Go home, go online and fill out the application. I can show you more next time you come down here. Alright. I took off the plastic apron, balled it up, and tossed it in a nearby garbage can. When you come back, don't bring that backpack. You'll read about things you shouldn't do on the website. Sounds good. Sorry, Janet apologized. I didn't get your name. It's Daniel, I informed her. Oh, Daniel in the lion's den. I like it. I remembered the old biblical story. It was clever. I walked out of the shelter, past the homeless littering the sidewalk, between the pigeons flooding the streets, and back to my shared apartment with Sam. What if something were to happen to me if I came down here? What would happen to Sam? I put my headphones in and turned up my music, keeping pace with the beat and attempting to make it out of this neighborhood quickly. If I was injured or needed help, Sam would be left alone. Perhaps this hadn't been such a good idea. Did I really need the additional danger this could add to my life? Or maybe it was the excitement, the thrill that I wanted. Maybe it was the rewarding feeling that I was now feeling for visiting this place. Something I had once felt with Sam, which was quickly fading over time. Giving back had become my drug, and I was becoming an addict. I wanted to do this. I had to do it. Maybe Kim or her friends could help Sam if I were in a pinch. Could I rely on them, though? That was the question. So that's chapter 12. So I'm opening the floor to a Q&A to the small section of listeners I have. Does anyone have any questions about the book? No, Sam is my quadriplegic caregiver, or my quadriplegic client. So she is paralyzed. In the book, she's paralyzed from the shoulders down. She has the use of her arms, but her hands don't work that well. So it's sort of like her neck was broken, you know, and I can't remember what the actual vertebrae was, but it's not complete paralysis, but almost complete paralysis. So, and then in the story, Sam is she is an ex-con who basically broke her neck after she got out of jail. So she has like a drug problem, and it's sort of like Daniel, my character, is trying to get her on like legal drugs, so she isn't as connected to like the street anymore. So that's sort of the background for that chapter is he's trying to get her to get legal drugs to do instead of trying to get them from other nefarious places.
Of course, by her choice, though, right?
Yeah.
Not by yours, by her choice.
Yeah. So. Yep. So that's my spiel. Any other questions, anybody? Macy, do you have a question?
No.
No? So, yeah. All right, that's it.